And welcome to our regular bite-size video. My name is Nikki Clough. I'm delighted to be with you today, and we're going to bring you a change, as we often do, from the regular technical sessions, and instead we're going to look at something on the personal skill side. And I'll just share my screen here with you. And there we are. So the title of today's session is Sharpen Your Focus. And it's, why do we pick this topic? Well, it's something that we very often do in our personal effectiveness sessions, certainly very much to do with time management, which is a very popular topic. One of the things I'm quite big on is that you can't actually manage time. You can only manage yourself in relation to time. And certainly one of the things that people want to be able to manage are their levels of focus, their levels of concentration, so that they have an enhanced ability to get the tasks that they want to complete done effectively and efficiently as possible. So that's what we're going to be looking at. And here are the running order of what we're going to discuss. So, looking at what the issue is, what the problem is, a little bit of kind of brain training, neuroscience stuff. I am not a neuroscientist. I am an accountant, albeit one that has a big interest in management and leadership skills, and working in a coaching environment. So I'll bring you the basic version of that, but there's some really interesting neuroscience stuff to think about. Talking about the danger of distractions, and in particular why multitasking is a big trap. So what to do about that, and really, leading up to some practical stuff that you might want to take away and put into practice yourself. Now, everybody's different, so some of the things that we'll suggest, you'll think, oh no, absolutely not, but other things, oh yeah, it might just work for you and might just make a difference. So that's what we'll look at. Okay, so what's the issue? Let me just show you this little graph. So this is something that was based on some research done back in 2002. It was in the US, to be fair, but it was a big study done over 10 years with 12 large companies. And what the researchers looked at is people's level of focus or concentration and their energy levels. So how much kind of effort and energy they were putting into their task. And they found that there was kind of four camps, if you like, of people, or types of behavior. People who were low in focus on what they were supposed to be doing, and also low in energy, with the people who were procrastinating, people who were high in focus, doing what they were supposed to be doing, but not really putting a lot of effort and energy into it. You would say that those people were disengaged with the task. People who were highly energized but not really doing what they were supposed to be doing, well, they were being distracted. And finally, people, holy grail, doing what they were supposed to be doing, highly focused on the task in hand, and putting a lot of effort and energy into it. They were the people behaving in a truly purposeful fashion. Now, I wonder if you can guess the percentages of people and the percentage of time, I guess, in each of these boxes. In particular, how much time were people spending being truly purposeful? And what was the biggest evil, I guess? What was the biggest problem that took them away from being truly purposeful? Well, believe it or not, the researchers found that only 10% of the people, 10% of the time, I guess, people were spending at work, they were being truly purposeful. 20% of people were found to be disengaged. 30% engaged in procrastination, putting off what needed to be done. And the biggest problem was people being distracted. I think it's worth noting that this research was done in 2002, before the invention of the smartphone and social media and so many other things that take our attention today. That actually often, if you think about what distracts you, I wouldn't be surprised if your phone was one of the guilty parties. So it's quite interesting. So what can we do to make ourselves and our time more purposeful? Because if we can push that above the 10%, then what it ought to mean, is that we get our jobs done quicker and more effectively, and we've got more time to spend on other things. So it's got to be worth it, hey? So what can we do? Well, let's have a little think about the neuroscience bit. So forgive me on this. This is again, I'm an accountant, not a neuroscience. But there's a lot we can think about, and I want to really make this personal. So think about your brain and how your brain works, and the bit of your brain that's responsible for focus and attention is the front bit of your brain, your prefrontal cortex, it is apparently called. And that's your executive function. It's the bit of your brain that's responsible for decision making, and so on. The bit of your brain, though, that is responsible for distraction generally is a different part, and that's kind of, I suppose, I often describe it as your survival brain. I think it's known as the limbic system, and it's also a survival brain that's actually attuned to look out for threats. And it's often that system that pulls us away from what we're actually trying to focus on. So we can't actually kind of help it. So this prehistoric brain is the one that's, if you like, leads us towards a reward and takes us away from threat. Why? Because we're built that way. Our survival brain is there to keep us alive. So if we have something that felt good, that could be the company of others, for example, that tasted good, then we want more of it, please, because that would keep us fed and watered, and maybe in a group situation, and keep us generally, surviving. And threats, well, the saber-toothed tiger, but things that might eat us, for example, we need to respond to those pretty quickly. And in fact, our brains are wired to respond to threats first. We're always on the lookout for threats, and the response is kind of fight or flight or freeze. So our brains are instinctively wired to look out for the rewards or threats, and that will distract us from maybe what we want to be doing. And a little bit of brain chemistry, if I may. It's quite interesting to see what's going on inside our brains. Lots, but three particular chemicals that are at play. Dopamine. You might have heard of the fun hormone, if you like, the fun chemical. So that's released when we do something fun and enjoyable. It's quite addictive because it floods us with good feeling. We want to do it again. Noradrenaline is released when we're responding to a threat, and that's the bit from our brain that gets us to release adrenaline, cortisol, so that we're kind of primed and pumped and ready for action, to either run or to fight. And acetylcholine, which is something, it's all about the level of focus. Apparently babies are born with absolutely tons of this, and it gets our brain to really laser sharp focus in on something that we have to kind of learn or respond to or analyze or whatever that is. And what's interesting, why I'm speaking about these three chemicals, is it's been studied. So psychologists and neuroscientists have looked at this and found that these are the three key chemicals in our brain that enable us to be in what is known as a state of flow. And the state of flow is where you're really highly focused. You don't even notice the time going. You're so absorbed in what you're doing, you lose track of time. And to get into that state of flow, what's required? Well, having a goal, something that you're trying to achieve, and that gets the acetylcholine involved to actually focus on that goal. Ideally, something that tests us and challenges us a little bit, so we have to concentrate and we have to focus, and that will then get our juices pumping, as it were, and a bit of adrenaline, a bit of energy from the noradrenaline that will be released. And then ideally, we'll get some feedback, whether that's because somebody's been pleased with what we've done, or we've achieved what we wanted to achieve, we've met a deadline, or we've won a piece of work, I don't know. But then the dopamine reward chemical kicks in. So these are the three elements that are needed for you to get to that kind of peak performance, if you like. And it's worthwhile sometimes, I think, thinking how you can build that into your days. You know, it is worthwhile doing challenging work. It's motivational to do that. The downside is, of course, that these same chemicals that help us enter a state of flow are also at play in, unfortunately, distracting us. So dopamine, the reward chemical, well, that is also sometimes known as the novelty chemical hormone or chemical. So it keeps us, once we've had a reward, it keeps us wanting more. So something new, something else. Certainly something that the social media companies know all too well, as we're scrolling through our social media feeds and finding something amusing, finding something interesting, and we're going on, we're sticking with it, or we're seeking out something new and putting the phone down, or we're pulled back towards it. The noradrenaline that gives us energy because we're responding to a challenge, that's fantastic, but that kind of fight or flight energy boost was never meant to be with us for very long. It was meant to be quite a swift response. So too much of that, then we enter a period of stress, really, if we have our adrenaline and cortisol levels too high for too long. And that can lead us to burnout. It can lead us to kind of giving up, because it gives us that bad feeling which we want to pull away from. And even thinking about acetylcholine, which gets us to focus in on a goal, again, once we've understood that goal, we've worked towards that goal, we'll be looking for something new. We'll be looking for a new goal to focus on, something new to learn. So our brains are really kind of fighting against each other, and it's all about how you can harness what's necessary for you to enter that state of flow. And typically it's not going to be, as you would imagine, all day, every day, but just for parts of the day, and being mindful of our brains also constantly, and we can't help it, trying to pull us away from that and being distracted. Distractions could be the digital distractions that I've been talking about. So it can be the pop-up on your email, it can be your phone, it can just be other people around you going on. We're surrounded by distractions, but which are the ones that really pull our attention, and what damage can they do? So I suppose it's interruptions, isn't it, to our levels of concentration. And here's some maybe slightly scary research. I could have pulled all sorts of things out. These are some things I've pulled out that I thought were particularly interesting. That actually, when you have been interrupted in a task, it's found that people usually take 50% longer to complete the task and make 50% more errors. it usually takes, if you're in a state of flow, it can take 23 minutes to get back on track. And if you're constantly checking messages, emails, and so on, as so many of us do, and what we're trying to do is keep all the balls in the air and, dare I say it, multitask, then actually it's been shown that our IQ, our intelligence, can drop by as much as 15 points. And what we find is that in the workplace, most people are interrupted or interrupt themselves because their brain looks for a distraction. So it's maybe not somebody coming and tapping them on the shoulder or phoning them, but it's actually allowing ourselves to be interrupted. And that in the workplace can happen roughly every 3 minutes. In fact, even if you're working by yourself, sometimes too much quiet is a distraction in itself, and your brain will sort of, I'm sure we've all been there when you're trying to get some work done and actually you find yourself drifting off. So we want to kind of minimize distractions, but it's quite hard to do. If we're relying just on effort, our prefrontal cortex to take charge, that takes a lot of effort and energy from us, and makes life harder. So what I'm going to come on to in a minute is some tips about how you can, I suppose, create the best circumstances to make being distracted less likely. Just a quick word though on I kind of mentioned multitasking there, and it's something that I'm aware that many people think they're really quite good at. Certainly I used to think that I would quite a good multitasker, doing various things at once, listening to music, doing my emails, on the phone while I was perhaps preparing a meal or something like this. But actually what we tend to be doing with multitasking is just shifting attention quite quickly. So we feel like we're doing more than one thing at once, but actually it's been proven, shock to me, I have to say, that our brains, no, they do not take well to multitasking. A little exercise, just a bit of fun. If you want to think about this, if you think you're a good multitasker, I'll grab a piece of paper and a pen. Pause me for a minute if you want to. And I'm going to give you a little exercise, very, very quick. And I'm going to give you a word. And I'm going to get you to spell out a word. And the word I'm giving you as an example, I'm going to give you the word task. And what I want you to do with the word I'm going to give you in a minute is to write the word out. And then what we're going to do is we're going to number the letters underneath. The word I'm going to give to you is multitasking. So write the word multitasking, and then underneath, number the letters. 12 or 13, I think, depending on whether you put a hyphen in or not. Okay. Now, if you've done that, I'm going to give you another exercise, and I'm going to give you a word. But this time, I'd like you to write the word and number the letters as you write them. So just as I'm showing you here with the word task, for each letter, write the number directly underneath. And the word I'm going to give you is multitasking. You might want to pause the video for a minute while you write that out. Okay. Pause the video if you need more time, but typically people find that second task harder than they expected it to be. You've already written the word out once, you've already numbered it, so all you're really doing is copy, so it should be easier, hey? Most people find it slower, have to put more effort in, and it can be surprising. Maybe not everybody, but most people find that, because what we're asking the brain to do is switch from one activity to another, and every time we do, we lose time, and it costs us effort and energy. So multitasking is a no-no. Why do we do it? I know I still try to, because sometimes we get a bit bored. And our brains are saying, oh, well, I'm a bit bored here. I don't want to be sat at my desk writing this report. Give me something else to do as well. And that will surely help the time go more quickly. Well, actually, it probably will suck your time up, because you won't be as efficient at your task. So what can you do? There are a gazillion and one time management tips out there. And I'm going to just focus on a few around this area of improving your focus and concentration, and making it easier for you to avoid multitasking, and setting yourself up for success. And I've just drawn some things out from there's lots and lots of things that have been written, but I'm using as a structure some things suggested by a couple of psychologists. Fantastic book, this one, really recommend it. Fabritus and Hageman, The Leading Brain. So here are some things to think about. First of all, prepare and plan. Usually we've planned that the thing that we need to do has got itself on our to-do list. So we've probably planned what we're going to do. We might even have planned when we're going to do it. But have we thought about how we're going to do it, where we're going to do it? Yeah, really how we're going to attack that task. So thinking about how you're going to do it before you start, and that includes some of the things that I'm going to mention. Keeping your interest, really, really key. Emotions play a huge part of our energy levels and motivation. So what can you do to make it fun? How can you enjoy your task a little bit more? So one of the things you can think about is mixing up a little bit. Perhaps if it's a meeting, well, do you have to have the meeting in the meeting room? Or maybe you go outside for a walk to meet with your colleague or make that phone call. Perhaps you change desks and go somewhere new. Yeah, so it's a different surroundings. So that just freshens things up a little bit. Perhaps you involve others. And actually, it's quite, there's a thing that I was just made aware of quite recently, that apparently on YouTube you can join in with people who are working or focusing or studying, and having them apparently on the screen in front of you encourages you to get your head down as well, because you feel like you're not alone and that you're doing it with a colleague. Amazing. So things that you can do just to kind of mix it up a little bit and make it fun. What would you find enjoyable? Maybe giving yourself a little reward at the end of a particular section of what you've got to do. We've talked about distractions and the danger of distractions. So don't just rely on your willpower. Willpower is very weak generally to, no, I'm not going to look at my phone. No, I'm not going to open my email. Do something at the start to create the circumstances that set you up for success. So turn off those email notifications. Doesn't have to be forever, but for half an hour or so. Yeah. Clear your desk of distractions, or perhaps go to a different desk which is clear. Breaking the task down into small chunks can really help. We'll talk about that later. So you're not distracted by the sort of, overwhelmed by the enormity of the task. Latest research has said that actually even having your phone, your smartphone that is, in the same room as you is enough to pull some of your attention away. So strong has been the influence of social media. So actually not just putting it on silent, not just putting it on do not disturb, but actually perhaps having it in a different room. And what's the environment like around you? Some people find that silence, and it needs to be really personal, this silence really works, but other people actually silence can be a bit of a distraction, because it can be that your brain's going, oh, it's a bit too quiet. And actually, what if some, I suppose your survival brain is worried about somebody creeping up on you, I guess. So sometimes a bit of hubbub of background music can help, which is why some people go to even a coffee shop and find they can really focus, because there's just a hubbub of background noise. Sometimes people put background music on, but it should really be instrumental. And there's lots of playlists and so on, things like Spotify now that you can pick up. So various things that you can do here from the outset to minimize the chances of those distractions kicking in, rather than just relying on your willpower. Picking your time, picking your sweet spot, I'd like to say. If you're not a morning person, there's no point coming in and thinking, oh, I'm going to just focus for the first hour, because your brain probably won't have woken up yet. Equally, if you're not a night owl, then that's not going to work either. So when is the time that you know that your energy levels are highest? Often for people, it can be first thing in the morning, before you start getting distracted by the business of the day. And it's really important as well to think that we're probably not going to want to have periods of that flow, high concentration on task for the entire day, because there's other things that are going to need to take your time. Quite rightly, you might be a partner in a business, you've got colleagues to work with and speak to. Other people are going to need to take your time, rather than just perhaps solo concentration work. So when is the time going to be that you are going to set aside for you to have those slots of concentration where you can say, right, I'm going to turn off the notifications, I'm going to get into a slot here where I can really focus. And you might have to agree that with other people. And in fact, sometimes agreeing that with other people is another real benefit to you getting that work done, because you shared it, you've kind of made that declaration with others. I love this quote, in fact, related to picking your time. Reserve large blocks of time on your calendar. Don't answer the phone. Instead, return calls in short bursts, once or twice a day. Now, you can kind of get that, rather than calls, it's kind of emails or messages we might put in today. But this is a quote from Peter Drucker in 1967. This is not a new problem. And in fact, the fact that our attention gets pulled away has always been a problem, and it's only got worse given the level of digital distractions that we face today. So give yourself a break. Don't beat yourself up, but think about what it is you can do to actually harness those blocks of time. We kind of mentioned this a bit earlier, chunking it up. So a couple of aspects to this. First of all, breaking down a task into smaller chunks is great. Does a number of things. That it gives you mini deadlines, which is the challenge perhaps that we're looking for. It makes perhaps the whole task less of a threat. So doing a little bit of a task at a time, and you've done it and you can tick it off your to-do list, that gives you that reward that we're looking for again. So more likely it is that on each chunk you can enter that sense of flow. The other interesting thing is to chunk up your time, and you probably will have to do that as well, because generally people working with others haven't got the freedom to just concentrate on their own task all day. You have to work with, very important, you work with other people as well. or you have got that time, working in blocks of time can be really helpful. I quite often work in 20 minutes. There's a technique called the Pomodoro technique, which is named after actually the person who invented it, used one of these kind of kitchen timers in the shape of a tomato, apparently. And the Italian word for tomato is Pomodoro, so that's where it comes from. But what this technique's about is concentrating for 25 minutes at a time, setting a timer to that effect, and then taking a break. And then another 25 minutes and then taking a break. It was the person who invented it was studying, and they found that this was the most effective way to concentrate, so not for hours on end, but breaking that up. It's a brilliant way as well for those people out there, such as myself, I'll be honest, who procrastinate and avoid starting a task, especially if it's a big task, because you know that you've only got to start, you've only had a go at it for 20 or 25 minutes, so it helps you to start. And our brains are quite resistant to starting, but they're quite good at continuing. So if you can find yourself a way to start a task, it's much more likely that you'll get that momentum, and that task will be finished. Harness your brain power. So back to, how do our brains work? That feels good. Do it again, says the dopamine. Fight or flight. Yeah, if there's a threat. This is our survival brain at work, and it's there and it's very, very strong. What can we do to quiet that survival brain and get our prefrontal cortex more involved, which is what we need for the focus and the attention? There's a lot being written, and in fact, the leading brain authors refer to it as the miracle of mindfulness. It's quite interesting. But there's an awful lot of neuroscience now to show that the technique of mindfulness, of quietening your survival brain and really kind of honing in on perhaps your breathing. So breathing is a very good technique for mindfulness, focusing just on physical sensations, and trying to quiet the distractions in your brain. It's actually been shown to effectively rewire the brain and to create new neural pathways and grow the grey matter. In fact, in our brains, some quite astonishing research. And, I suppose it's building on meditation practices and so on. But there's certain techniques such as breathing that you can actually build into your day. So taking a short time out, you can just sometimes for a minute, just to do some deep breathing, perhaps take a breath of air, slowing things down a little bit, can really make it a huge difference. So building that in, so when you're feeling yourself distracted, perhaps taking a beat, there's some very interesting techniques there. So it's worth a look at if it's not something that you have particularly explored before. And finally, the best of all, regular breaks. Regular breaks make you more productive, not less productive. Taking a lunch break, taking a walk around the park, away from your phone, ideally, breathing in the air, have all been shown to actually make you more efficient, not less. And it's a really hard thing to do when you're up against a deadline, but actually taking those breaks, maybe it's the 5-minute breaks after a 25-minute Pomodoro session, or maybe it's a longer lunch break. And it's paying attention, isn't it, to your well-being, which is massively important to not only your body health, but your brain health as well. And that's dead important to help you be more efficient and improve your focus. So that's it. I hope that was of some interest to you. We've talked about why lack of focus is an issue, some little snippets of neuroscience around why it's quite hard to train our brain to maximize attention and focus and move away from distractions, and that the modern world is not making it easy for us. And then a few practical tips, kind of personal tips, things you can think about that you might want to drop into your day that might help your focus be a little sharper. Thanks very much. I hope you enjoyed